Today we are going to recycle a jeans pocket into a lovely, hopefully embroidered brooch or patch. So I've got these jeans pockets from old jeans and I thought I would make a brooch. It's actually going to be a gift for someone. And I think the smallest pocket is probably a good size for a brooch. But you could, I will also talk you through how to make a patch if you wanted to as well. You could also just use the pocket as a centerpiece on a fabric collage. We're going to trim the excess fabric off and just leave the pocket shape. You could place that at the center of your hoop, and I'm imagining flowers, but you could do all sorts with it, I think. And I'm sure I will use the other two pockets as well. You can see this pocket has its lining sewed into it, so you might want to take that off because you've got 3 layers of fabric there. This one, the fabric used for the lining of the pocket wasn't attached to the top part of the pocket, so that helps us a little bit. We are going to trim it down and see what it looks like. You can see the pocket has some stitches attaching it to the back of the denim. We are going to cut that off. The rivets are in place, so they will keep it there. So it's a lot smaller now. You can see the size we are actually working with. Now, any sensible person would also take the back off, or if you've seen my other video where I'm trying to sew on a pocket, and I'm saying sort of never again, let's not do that, then you won't try and sew without taking the back off. Thing is, this is riveted on, so if I did cut it, I'd have to cut the rivets out, and it would be a shame to lose those. Have they all got rivets? These all do have rivets, these pockets. So we are going to attempt to sew on the inside of the pocket. It is going to be very fiddly, so it might take me a while. But then that gives you a back of a pocket already nicely done. It's quite a wonky pocket. I can take that off a little bit more, but that does not look straight to me. But anyway, that will be part of its charm when I've done it, hopefully. So we're gonna choose a needle. I think it's gonna have to be quite a big-eyed needle. Yeah, that's fine. I'm not gonna hoop it up. Denim is pretty rigid, unless you get one that has some elastic in it. Then it is pretty rigid. You're okay, it shouldn't stretch. And I'm going to choose some threads. My original idea was flowers coming up from the bottom, just sort of wildflowers, no pattern. You could use a stick and stitch on here. There's loads about that are really, they're quite small and they're a simple flower or butterfly, and that would work really well in design. But I do have problems with stick and stitch. I don't know why, but I always find it hard to get off, and it is harder to stitch through, and we are trying to do denim here, which itself is a thick fabric. I still want to do something just freehand, no design. But I'm wondering if actually we do sort of an off-center flower near the top, and maybe a little bumblebee or something near it, but not try and concentrate all the sewing at the bottom, because really it's going to be quite tricky to get down there. A lot of pockets don't have the rivets, so you won't have this problem. You simply unpick the back and then you're just working with one layer of fabric, and you can pop a felt back on, or you can put the denim back on the back when you've finished. So I've just got a little jar of skeins that I've kind of started. And hopefully I can find what I need. I think we'll want some green. And I think I saw a white. So I might do a daisy with some lazy daisies. If you're making a brooch, then the stitches you use don't really matter. If you're making a patch and you think it might go in the wash, then it's really important to choose your stitches carefully. They've got to be quite dense, quite small, no big satin stitch, because once that goes in the wash you might lose the tension of the stitch. That's the same yellow, it's very bright. I go for orange instead. And also, if you are going to put it on clothes like a patch, or you could actually sew it, a patch pocket onto an item of clothing, then you need to think about the colour fast nature of your threads. They're not all colour fast by design. So DMC usually are, but I have heard horror stories about their red occasionally running. And if you don't know what make your threads are, say they're from a kit, or they're just sort of cheap ones off Temu or Amazon, then I wouldn't rely on them being colour fast. I would perhaps wash them beforehand, and if you wash them with vinegar and bicarbonate of soda, that should get all the spare sort of colour dye out, and then you don't have to worry about it leaking later on. So we are going to start with a daisy. We will do some French knots in the centre and some lazy daisy petals, and I think I will fill the lazy daisy petals as well to give it a bit more of a dense look. We're going to use 3 threads, which is a bit more than I usually do, but you want it to stand out against the denim. You want it to be quite chunky. So let's see how easy this is. There's enough room for my fingers, not much else. So we will see how this goes. There we go. No problem doing that. It's just awkward. But because this is on such a small scale, and I haven't got the whole fabric of the whole pair of trousers or shirt or whatever, I think we're going to be okay. We're just going to have to take our time a little bit. So I think I've done enough French knots there. Now the problem is securing them on the back. So I'm just sort of turning it almost inside out to get to the back. There we go. And I can just do some little over stitches. There we go. We are going to try and keep the back as neat as possible, even though it's covered up. Okay, so there's our first little bit done. I'm going to do the lazy daisies now, and then if there's some gaps between the lazy daisies and the centre, I can always add to the centre. Right, let's see how these work. I'm going to try and do the bottom ones first. Got to get right in there. And we want them sort of a thumb length probably. That'll be a good size, which is handy because then you I'm going to try and do it in one movement. Yeah, okay, maybe not. Got to make sure we don't sew into the bottom here. So I'm going to come out. Oops. And then back in. So yeah, these will be switching hands, I think. Just trying to find the right place to come up. There we go. I think that's okay. A little bit wonky. And back down again. I'm going to do the straight stitch after I've done the loop, the lazy daisy. So bear with me on this bit. There we go. So I think the little daisy is done now. I want to add a bit more colour, so I'm going to add some green. And you could just do more lazy daisy stitches because daisies don't actually have that much green sort of showing through them. I think I'm just going to do some little sort of triangles of straight stitch. It might turn out to be long and short, we will see. I'm going to do one stitch for the middle, not too long, trying to come down a little bit in between where I can see a gap of the petals, and then just keeping my finger underneath it so I can sort of direct it, and then come back up the right place without having to come out here, and a little bit smaller. we've finished our little leaves now. And I'm going to do a little bee here, sort of in a semicircle shape. I think the last bee I did, I compared to a croissant, and that was actually quite a good shape for a little bee going towards its flower. So we will try and recreate that. And I think last time I also did a kind of flight path to show where it had been, just in running stitch. So I'm going to do that as well, because I do think it needs a little something extra, and I was thinking maybe it should have been bigger, or maybe I should have added more flowers. But I think actually the bee with the little path will be enough. We shall see. So this bee is just going to be a little bit of satin stitch, very short, or just straight stitches together really. So we'll probably have a little black tail, and then the middle of his body, 2 sections will be yellow. Swapped my yellow for a brighter yellow to have a bit of difference. I do want slightly smaller stitches next to the first one I did. It's just gone over the other one, there we go. To give the suggestion going this way that the tail is getting smaller, and then maybe bigger that way. And just a couple more, then we'll do a different section. Maybe give it some legs in black. See if that shows up. Right, we're going to skip a little section to fill in with black. So we're going to do the black. Just a tiny bit here, here, and then the head. And I think we'll do maybe 1 or 2 strands of the white for some wings, as well as the flight path. That is what I call it. Cute. Then the last little bit of white. I'm just going to do 1 strand for the wings, but I might swap back to 2 for the little snail trail. And we don't need the filling in for the wing, we're just giving a sort of a suggestion of a wing. Oops. and we will go back to 2 strands here. We're going with 2 strands of a light blue. I'm just going to do tiny little running stitches. This is not super easy. Actually, I might do it. Can I do it this way? No, easier this way. Maybe I am right-handed. So once you finish your design, if you've taken the back off, then that will need to be sewed back on. But you will need some, if you're making a brooch, you will need a little brooch pin. If you're making a patch, you can put the back straight on. This is a 4 centimeter one. I have looked for bigger, but I've not seen it. So I think actually once you get into this size, really you don't want to do brooches much bigger than the size of this patch, unless you've got one with like a full back, so not a bar back but like a circular back or something. That would support your brooch. I'm going to put it not in the center, put it slightly higher up, then it should just hang down flat. So put it there. I think it is big enough. Just I think for the bigger pockets, I will make patches. So we're just going to sew like we've sewn in the fabric before, but we're not sewing on the front, we're now sewing on the back. And it comes with these little holes, so all we're going to do is some neat little stitches coming up through the hole and then down on one side, and then do a couple coming down on the other side as well. It's a little bit slippery until it's in place. So I finished sewing this on, it's pretty secure. After I'd done each hole, I went back and just did some over stitches over the top as well. So that is not going anywhere. You can see it's starting to fray, and this down the sides and the bottom will sort of add to the overall look of the upcycled piece. But we don't want the top fraying too much, because that does not have a row of stitching to stop it fraying. So I'm going to trim that down, and then the last job is just to sew across the top. If you're making a patch, you could actually leave it open and make sort of a patch pocket if it's nice and secure on the back of your piece of clothing, as long as you've sort of sewn a row of some kind of stitching across the top so it doesn't continue to fray. So I'm going to take a little bit more off, just a touch, and then I think there's a number of stitches you could do. You could just do overcast stitch, blanket stitch, or I think I am just gonna keep it simple and do a row, or maybe 2 rows, or back stitch, a row of running stitch in this light blue. So maybe it'll look a little bit like the bee has already been up here. I'm going to start inside, and I'm not going to be able to do much about this bit unless I just do overstitch. This bit looks very secure. You could use a touch of fabric glue on the ends if you are worried about it fraying too much. I think we will just start. Let's see if I can get through it. Yeah, I can. Over here, tuck your end in. And there we have recycled or upcycled denim pocket brooch or patch. I think that's pretty cute and smart enough for a gift, I hope, for the right person.